Recently online, there's been a lot of discussion about when edgy content is finally going to come back, okay? When are we finally going to be able to come back to the glory days of 2016? Well, I have some opinions on that, so let's talk about it. If you've been online for any amount of time, you've probably heard 2016 thrown around like it's some like mythical year when Jesus Christ descended, and in a way it kind of was. Content online really hasn't reached the same level it was in 2016. Maybe that's just me putting on rose-tinted glasses, but I truly think that 2016, and that kind of includes the beginning of 2015 and 17 with it, but there was really just something different. There's a different energy on the internet, and I think that energy is starting to come back right now. A big thing that made 2016 so good was it was really when a lot of commentary channels were blowing the fuck up for the first time, right? You had people like Pyro Cynical, Leafy is here. You would probably throw in like Keemstar and Grade with those two. These massive channels, and there hasn't been commentary channels as big as them. They were pulling in millions of views per day. Wild numbers to think about, especially considering the highest grossing commentary channel right now has about 1 million subs, which is obviously great, right? That's huge numbers, but it's nowhere near people like Leafy or Pyro back in the day. And these commentary channels back in the day, they got so big not by doing, the classic drama content, but by doing, reacting to cringe feminists. You've probably seen those videos, like at this point they're like 7 or 6 years old, but they have like millions of views on them, like 50 million views some of them have, which is crazy. And these videos, they're not the greatest, they're not high works of art, but for the time they were pretty funny, and they blew the fuck up off these. And then once they got bigger, they started having a lot of infighting, the whole Keemstar exposed video, that, we're all trying to forget that still 7 years later, but it really damaged the reputation of a lot of the commentary channels. Leafy stopped posting, Grade stopped posting, Pyro kind of moved away from the commentary community. Really, Keemstar is the only one left, which, that fucking rat will just never die. An often forgotten part of the 2016 commentary era was the rise of the skeptic channels. Now, these were people like Shoe-on-Head and Armored Skeptic, and, personally, I don't really like their content. You can go back and watch it, it's not great, but what they would do is they would react to cringy feminists, but they would do it in a way where it was more serious, like they were actually, taking some political meaning from it, as opposed to someone like Leafy or Pyro, who were just, like, ragging on the feminists for fun. These people were definitely more inherently political, and that brought in a different audience than the commentary channels who were just doing it for fun. The reason I bring up the skeptic channels is not because I'm a huge fan of them, but because they almost had a parasitic relationship with the commentary channels, where the commentary channels would make fun of something for fun, and then if people started to come after the commentary channels, the skeptics would help out the commentary channels, and vice versa. If people were going after the skeptics, the commentary channels would help out. And while I don't think this was intended at the time, like it wasn't a coordinated effort, it definitely did happen, and you can go back if you watch all these people's videos. I haven't done that, I watched them at the time, and from what I remember, there were definitely close friends between, the commentary community and the skeptic community, even though they were so different. In a very similar way to how the 2016 commentary people really fell from grace because of how much they were infighting and just how much shit they were throwing at each other, the skeptics had a very similar thing, except the skeptics, there was infighting, but there was also attacks from outside, right? A lot of leftist people would take shots at the skeptics who are admittedly more right-wing, right? There was some people who were like genuinely Nazis in the skeptics at the fall. There's a lot of shit, okay? They looked retarded, quite frankly. There's a whole thing with this app called Candid, which was like a Twitter clone, and it was supposed to be super pro-free speech. Obviously, the skeptics would like that, but it ended up that it would like mine your data, and that they were trying to throw out bots that would like ban people. So obviously, the skeptics who promoted it looked retarded, and that's fair. They were retarded for doing that, but it really quickly led to the downfall of their channels, and none of them are left now. The only one who's left is Shoe-on-Head. I think there's a few that are still active on Twitter, but none of the skeptics are still making the same videos they were back in the day. Now, while the commentary channel's downfall kind of just led to a rebirth where more commentary channels would come in and do the same type of stuff, right? Leafy really hit the nail on the head with the formula he created. I'm using it right now, right? Self-admitted Leafy clone here, but the skeptics did it a little bit different. When they fell, a whole new group of people came in, and they were these really far left people, right? A lot of the skeptics were pretty far far right. A lot of the bread tubers, that's the group that took over them. I'm not sure why they're called that, but they were pretty far left. And the thing about BreadTube is that it wasn't really organized like the skeptics. The skeptics were constantly in each other's videos. They were all friends with each other. The bread tubers weren't really like that. It was just kind of like a nebulous group of people that kind of made leftist video essays. Now, like I just said, the commentary channels kind of had a rebirth with people like Scrubby and Cyrus who did the same type of stuff that Leafy and Pyro were doing back in the day. The thing about them is that they weren't really the same as Leafy and Pyro, and the reason is they built audiences around the topics they talked about instead of around their own personalities, right? Leafy was someone who, while he was a commentary channel, he was almost like a personality channel. You watched him because he was Leafy, but you wouldn't watch someone like Cyrus or Scrubby because they were them. You would watch them for whatever they were covering. They did cover good topics, right? They probably made hundreds of thousands of dollars off those videos, which good for them, but they didn't last. They only lasted a few years maximum. The reason why 2018 and 19 are classified differently than 2016, even though they were both commentary channels, is because people like Cyrus and Scrubby just weren't as edgy as people like Leafy and Pyro. There was definitely a different energy going on. I think the main reason is because people like Cyrus and Scrubby were doing it for money, which, you know, I'm not gonna come after them for that, right? That's their prerogative to do it, but they just didn't curse as much. They didn't go as hard as someone like Leafy did, and personally, you know, I like someone like Leafy for doing that over someone like Cyrus who would talk about a topic and then just leave it at that. These channels would eventually die off, and instead of creating, you know, another new wave of commentary channels in a similar light, they kind of split off into two different waves. Firstly, you had, you know, kind of the revival of commentary in 2020 and 2021 with people making dream videos. These were people like Connor Pugs and Poncho. I don't really have a lot to say about them because their channels are completely dead in the water. I don't know what the fuck happened, but they were doing good like a year or two ago, and now they're just dead. They are not getting any views, no sub gain. I don't know what the fuck happened with them, but they are completely gone. Then you had what I would call leftist commentators. Again, with the leftists for some reason being these just kind of like weird groups of people that kind of get along and not like coordinated groups. People like Jarvis Johnson and Nick is Not Green I would put in this category. They like to use face cam way more than gameplay footage, which, you know, their videos look better, okay? I'm just gonna flat out be real. Their videos look way higher quality. That being said, in a very similar light to someone like Cyrus, they would just talk about a topic and not really say anything. They wouldn't go hard, but because of how brand friendly they were, they really appealed to people. These channels are still going strong. They're starting to kind of die off, but they're still getting fairly good views for their channel sizes. In a very similar way to how the skeptics would feed off the commentary channels and then the commentary channels would feed off the skeptics, these new leftist commentary channels and BreadTube would feed off of each other in a very similar light. If someone went after BreadTube, these commentary channels were more likely to help out BreadTube. I'm sure you've seen a lot of these commentary channels go after this whatever podcast, which, you know, that podcast looks gay. One of the chicks in it like wears a Kaiser helmet, which is kind of cool, but other than that, that podcast looks it looks bad, let's just be real here, but the fact that they all did it kind of shows they're all in this group, they're working as one unit, as opposed to commentary right now, which is anyone who says their commentary is commentary. Kind of back to the original premise of this video, I think the reason people bring up 2016, especially in the past few years, is because we haven't had any energy like that for the longest time. BreadTube has dominated YouTube for the past 6 or 7 years, really since the skeptics died. It's been BreadTube, and BreadTube kind of sucks. It's not as entertaining. Obviously, you know, if you want to be morally righteous, they probably are better. A lot of the skeptics were pretty fucked up. A lot of the commentary channels were pretty fucked up, but overall entertainment value sunk, which is all I care about, okay? 80s WWE style. I don't care if you're doing coke off of hookers' asses, you know, before you go out there and fight. I just want you to put on a good show, which the commentary channels certainly did. However, in the past year, BreadTube has imploded. I think part of that is because it got so big to the point where it was almost impossible for it to keep going the way it was. These channels were just growing so much, it was never going to keep up, right? The 2018 growth that people like ContraPoints and Vosh experienced, it was never going to stay the same 5 years later. However, that being said, I think someone who played a pretty good role in bringing BreadTube down was Destiny. You know, kind of surprising. He's a pretty leftist streamer, but he would constantly go after these people for just having bad takes, and, you know, that's why I respect someone like Destiny. it feels like he always is coming from a pretty good point. He's like, you guys are objectively wrong about this, as opposed to getting all in his feelings about something like a lot of the breadtubers did. Well, Destiny did some damage, and there was certainly some infighting that didn't help. The biggest reason breadtube has fallen so bad is because of red pill people.
Get rid of it, make a mess. When I pull up, you hear the vet. Spaghettis, they fall off my neck. I'm smoking that side to the chest. Bring that shit up off the muscle. Walk with the Glock, I don't touch them. Niggas talk shit, it ain't nothing. 300 all cash.
People like Sneeko and Tate were really the reason breadtube fell. They kind of just rushed onto the scene last year, and they've just been relevant ever since. And I think the reason is because breadtube was so easy to make fun of that anyone with a sense of humor was going to side with someone like Tate or Sneeko, even if they said insane shit to the side. Also, Tate having probably the best marketing scheme I've ever seen anyone use in my entire life probably helped. I'm not going to go super in depth with that. I don't want to lick Tate's balls too much, but look into it if you haven't, because that man is low-key a genius. Now, I don't want to come off as the biggest Andrew Tate or Sneeko ass lickers, okay? I don't like what they say. I'm not a huge fan of their political opinions, okay? Sneeko recently has gone full Jewish conspiracy mode, which I'm not a fan of. However, there's definitely been a change in energy, right? Sneeko and Tate did get banned, but while they were still on YouTube, they were some of the fastest growing channels ever, right? Sneeko got like 1 million subs in 2 months. That's fucking crazy. And I think it shows that people are ready for this new wave of edgy content. They just need people to give it to them. So that's kind of how we've gotten into the position that we've gotten into. Really, the thing that solidified this opinion for me was I saw accounts like Dexterto on Twitter tweeting about Andrew Tate and Sneeko, more about people than Mr. Beast or PewDiePie, these brand-friendly, safe, huge YouTubers. They're not tweeting about them. They're tweeting about Andrew Tate, Sneeko, these red pill guys, which, they are insane. They definitely deserve those tweets, but these people are just not frowned upon anymore, right? Obviously, Sneeko, to the average person, looks insane, but an average internet user is not an average person, okay? The average internet user is fucking crazy. Not to get too, personal, parasocial here, but the reason I've come back to this channel after 9 months of fucking abandoning it is because I've seen this edgy wave come back, and I really think that, I can be part of that. I don't want to get, too big for my britches. I just hit 500 subs, which is not the biggest milestone anyone's hit, obviously, but I really think that I can be successful in this landscape, right? I look at someone like Sneeko and I say, yeah, I can do that, but better, right? Sneeko had that moment. I talked about this in a video I did recently. He had a moment where he was like, I can do that, but better, and now I'm having that same thing looking at him. That's really it on the internet history lesson and my kind of opinion on this channel. However, my long-term thoughts on the internet as a whole is, firstly, Twitch dies in the next year or two, right? Twitch as a site just no longer exists. They can't pay for it. Amazon abandons it, and Kick and Rumble just feast on its corpse. They take all of the big streamers left. I'm pretty sure Kick will probably get more, but that's just my thought. After that, we see breadtube just slowly corrode away in a similar way to the skeptics. People like Andrew Tate and Sneeko, I don't think they're going to be the people who fully put the nail in the coffin, but I think people are going to come along and poke holes in what breadtube has been saying for the past 5 years, more so than people like Tate and Sneeko have, and they're going to destroy the breadtubers, right? The breadtube, probably in the next 2-3 years, again, it's not going to exist, and I think those people who do successfully destroy it, they're going to, become rich off it. They're going to become the new commentary channels. Back to streaming sites, I think, something horrible happens on Rumble. I'm not sure what, but I can just see Rumble getting into a huge controversy. Not to, open my fucking third eye or anything, but I definitely think in the streaming service war between Kick and Rumble, Kick, it's in for the long haul, and I think it will win the war that's currently going on. And then, it'll probably all start again, right? The people who take down breadtube will, in a similar light, be taken down, and then we'll be back to leftist, shitty video essays for another 5 years, which I'm not excited for. I can already see it coming, even though we're 3 steps before that, but it'll happen, okay? These things constantly change, but I am excited for the next couple of years, even if I don't blow up off of it, even if it goes differently than how I predict, it'll definitely be interesting. I can say that much for sure.